Hey there everybody, Jandor here, bringing you part 2 of my International 4 Invitee Primer. If you have not seen part 1, it is available on the YouTubes right now. It details the former champions, the Alliance, Na'Vi, and Invictus Gaming. This episode is going to feature the Russian, North American, and European teams competing, and the final episode will feature the Chinese and Southeast Asian teams. But before we get into the details, the number crunching, the nitty-gritty of the teams I'm detailing in this episode, I do want to go over the current TI4 prize pool. It is now $5,274,378, and it's still going up. We might actually get to that $6 million prize pool, that stretch goal that Valve put in, that I'm sure everybody thought was just sort of, far off, wild-eyed fantasy. But no, we are almost there. We are closing the gap very rapidly. It'll be really interesting to see if we make it. This is a staggering amount of money. It's very, very cool to see. This is pretty awesome for the esports, and I'm just impressed at how fast it's been going up and how much there is, man. It almost makes me want to do competitive Dota, except I'm not that good. But let's get into it. I want to introduce the invitees, and I remember I pulled the team statistics from Join Dota. I also found some stuff on Gosu Gamers and the Liquipedia for this week's episode. Starting with EG, Evil Geniuses, the up-and-comers. Their Join Dota team ranking. First. They are first in the world, EG, right now. They are the champions of being first in the world. They're real good. Let's get into the details. The team captain is Peter, PPD Dagger, or Dagger, this gentleman right here. Next up, we have Clinton, Fear Loomis, who you may recognize from his role as, one of those followed, the subjects of the Valve documentary Free to Play. Next up, we have Artur Artizi Babev from Canada. If you have ever watched his stream, he has excellent taste in music. Next on the list is Sahil Universe Aurora, this gentleman right here, and rounding out the team, Ludwig Zai Wahlberg, this gentleman right here, rocking the sweet red headset. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the details, starting with PPD, the team captain. His Join Dota rank is 2. His home country, the United States. He has 161 career wins with 55 career losses as part of EG, or a little bit before, I think, with a win rate of 75%. And he plays position 5 hard support. You can follow him on Twitter at PPDDota. And excellent player, as we can see. Recent heroes he has played from the most recent matches that I can find. His most commons were Treant Protector, who has gotten a bit of a resurgence in the metagame as of late. Has shown himself to be a very dangerous support in an aggressive lineup. As well as the Bane, similar sort of thing. Great setup for someone like a Carry Marana in an aggressive tri-lane. So both very good heroes, both common. We may see some of that at TI4, unless the metagame changes significantly. But he's been doing well on these guys. Moving on, we have Fear. He is the position 1 hard carry. His win rate, 57%, which comes from a combined 318 games won and 238 games lost. He's been around the scene for a little while, knows his way around the Dota. His Join Dota rank 43rd, his home country, the United States. You can follow him on Twitter at FearDota. He's also been commenting with the Beyond the Summit Studios folks on a number of the qualifier games, specifically North American qualifiers, which has been really cool to see. His recent heroes played the Doombringer and the Slark. Both good heroes, both different sort of an application. Slark is a bit of a roamer, ganker, interesting slippery sort of carry, whereas the Doom is big and tanky and shuts one person down really hard in a fight. If you guys want to check out some Doom gameplay, you can look at my Learning the Ropes series on YouTube. I have one I just posted recently about Doom. It was an interesting game. He's an interesting hero. Moving right along, we have Artizi. Artizi saves. Join Dota rank 1st. He's first. He's one of the best, if not the best player in the world right now. Very talented player. Always or almost always plays mid. He is their position 2. He certainly always plays mid for EG, at least so far. His home country, Canada. His win rate, 71% professionally, with 209 games won to 85 games lost. You can follow him on Twitter at Artizi. His recent heroes played the Lycan and the Tinker. Lycan had a big sort of resurgence, or I suppose resurgence is the word. He was very popular in the metagame around the Star Ladder series and has maintained popularity despite having some nerfs in the latest patch. And Tinker is Tinker, man. He's real good. You can farm with them, you can roam with them. He's got major presence because he can just be all over the map almost all the time, pushing lanes and basically making a nuisance of himself. He's a pretty cool hero, and I hope we get to see a little bit of Arteezy Tinker in the TI4 matches because I like watching Tinker. He's a lot of fun. Next, we have Universe. He is 4th on his Join Dota rank, home country, also from the United States. He has a win rate of 59%. He is the position 3 offlaner. You can follow him on Twitter at UniverseDota. His 59% win rate comes from 362 games won and 254 games lost. Pretty sizable professional career there. His most recent heroes played the Batrider and the Darkseer. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last video, but we have seen Darkseer coming back. Team Liquid's been drafting him in the qualifiers. He's been kind of seen in a number of games recently. And the Batrider has never really, kind of falls in and out of favor, but has never really gone away because, well, he's an excellent initiator and you can do a lot with him. So Universe, pretty solid offlaner with 2 very solid offlane heroes. Next up, Zai. He is 5th on Join Dota. His home country, Sweden. His win rate, 73% from 146 games won, 54 games lost, so around 200 games there. He is the position 4 semi-support, and his Twitter handle, none that I could find, so I'm sorry, you can't follow him on Twitter. However, his most recent heroes played were the Wisp and the Visage. Both interesting heroes, both very capable of sort of changing the pace of the game. Wisp has some global presence with relocate, an ability to gank by bringing another hero along with them anywhere on the map that you have vision. The Visage is good at pushing towers, getting vision with the familiars, and getting hero kills and can make quite an impact as well, especially in the early to mid game. Moving right along, our team highlights. They are one of the old, EG, Evil Geniuses, is one of the oldest North American professional gaming organizations. They are competitive across multiple games. They've got lots of sponsors. They have teams all over the place. They've had a sort of rough history with Dota 2, however. Their roster has seen all kinds of upsets, ups and downs and changes and backs and forth, and is a team been dissolved completely or is it on hiatus or what's the deal? Like, it wasn't even certain whether or not EG was going to be competing at the International back earlier this year in the winter because we weren't sure if there was going to be an EG. But after the success of teams like, well, Sad Boys, who is now EG basically, as you can see, the current roster formed when Fear and Universe stood in with PPD, Zai, and Arteezy on the team Sad Boys. And that was back in, I believe, January or February. And that team came out of the gate and just made a whole bunch of noise. And all of a sudden they got signed by EG. And that is the current roster. They've been making waves ever since. Now their team leader, or this team lead, later became the current EG, as I said. They've had a 16-2 record as Sad Boys. It was ridiculous. And they were major contenders at Star Ladder Season 9. So I think these guys are pretty damn good. Take a look at the performance graph. You can see that, and bear in mind that the current roster really formed around February. So that December, there's some missing months around that winter area. That's part of it, is the team has sort of fallen apart and then sort of reformed and then officially got its name towards the end of February. But, well, let me just take a look. From July through April, with a couple of months off, they're still seeing a steady increase in wins and a dramatic drop in losses. Their win rate has been increasing. The number of games played has been increasing, but their win rate also has been increasing, which is cool. Not something we've seen. We have seen a lot of semi-parallel or similar rises between wins and losses as teams are playing more over time, but that's keeping their win rate relatively stable. In this case, in March alone, they won 44 games and only lost 13, and in April they won 30 and lost 12. They are just rocketing up. So these guys are someone to watch out for certain. Overall wins and losses across the span of the career of EG, 388 wins, 261 losses, giving them an overall win rate of 60%. As you guys can see from the previous graph, that win rate has been increasing as of late. But this is something to think about. You know, if this roster, this is all the combined rosters before, but I think this particular number, it needs to be modified by the fact that the guys that are currently dominating so much have only been together for a few months. It remains to be seen whether or not they can maintain that momentum. But this is still a very respectable win rate either way. Now, if we take a look at some notable heroes from the last 20 games, the most played was the Treant Protector, their most wins was with a Bat Rider, and the least number of wins was with a Huskar. I think they played him once and lost, something along those lines. So that's kind of, there you go. Huskar is a tricky hero. He got changed in the recent patch so that his Burning Spears is no longer a unique attack modifier, meaning you can stack lifesteal and other stuff on him, which is pretty powerful, but not as powerful as it seems on paper from what I've seen in games. And we've already talked about the Tree and the Bat, both very good heroes. So, predictions. Since forming their roster in February, as I've talked about, they have just been wrecking house, smashing face, and generally taking names. They have taken first place in 5 different tournaments since March. These are some smaller tournaments, some bigger tournaments, but they've really been on the up and up. After a strong initial showing at Starladder Season 9, they took 3rd place, losing to Team Empire, which is still a very respectable showing, but there were a lot of people who were kind of counting on them to win the whole thing. And towards the last few games, they just seemed to they couldn't pull it out against Empire. Fear, it also should be noted, has been out on injury for a while now. He was, during the Starladder series, actually Eternal Envy was the one playing the position 1 role on loan from Cloud9, who we'll be talking about a little later. He subbed in for Fear, and Fear I think is still recovering, but should be back on the team somewhat soon. He was resting his hand after a wrist injury, and it's hoped that they'll be able to get some time practicing together, playing competitively, and maybe get a boot camp so that they can kind of, work together as a whole cohesive unit. Now, based on the numbers, I think these are the fiercest competitors on the scene right now. They've just been rocketing up, which is really cool to see. But, unless they suddenly lose momentum, I would imagine they're going to be in the finals. Then again, given what happened at Starladder, and again, this is with Eternal Envy on the team, not with Fear. But what happened in Starladder, they weren't able to sort of pull it all the way out, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing more about, are they going to choke under the pressure? I don't know. I have faith that these guys are going to do tremendously well, and I don't think and if they're not the ones that win the international, or they don't take top 2 or 3, it won't be because they played badly, because somebody else played better. That's my prediction. So, moving right along, the people who beat EG at Starladder Season 9, Team Empire. They're joining Dota team ranking 4th. Their roster, Team Captain Andrew Mag Chepenko. This gentleman right here. Following that, we have Aryat Silent Gaziev. This gentleman with his rockin' green headphones. Following Aryat, we have Ivan Vanskor Skorkod. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This guy here rocking a sweet green hat. Next up, we have Andrei Always Wanna Fly Bondarenko. And last but not least, rounding out Team Empire is Roman Resolution Fomenuk. This gentleman right here. Moving along, we're going to take a look at the individual player statistics, starting with Mag, the team captain. His joined Dota rank is 20th. He is from the Ukraine. He has 355 wins, 204 losses, giving him an overall win rate of 64%. He is the position 3 offlaner. You can find him online on the Twitters at followmag_. Remember the underscore. His notable heroes. So the notable heroes were taken from the gosugaming.net. These are heroes that are well known on these particular players, and in Mag's case we have the Axe and the Bat Rider. Both interesting offlaners. Axe used to be played in the jungle. Now he's kind of a mix of different places. He doesn't have a lot of escape mechanisms, but he is dangerous to go against. If you're playing him in an offlane against melee heroes, for example, he's pretty dangerous because if you try to engage on him, he's just going to spin to win. So it makes him a risky target. And the Bat Rider, as we all know, is the Bat Rider. He's pretty awesome. Silent, coming in at their position 1 hard carry. He has a joined Dota ranking of 23rd, very respectable. He is from Russia. He has 462 wins to 265 losses, giving him an overall win rate of 64%. And you, can't follow him on Twitter because as near as I can tell, he doesn't have one. But his notable heroes include the Darkseer and the Lycan. Now, what's interesting about this is Darkseer typically not played position 1. This may mean that there was at some point in somewhat, recent past that they did a bit of a lineup shift and started playing Silent on a hard carry role instead of maybe an off-lane role or a position 2. But the Lycan can be played as a hard carry, or can certainly be played in the jungle, can be played mid. He's a very flexible hero. So it's not surprising to see someone like a Lycan, especially with the popularity it's had in the metagame as of late, on someone like Silent, who's going to be your hard carry. Next up, we have Vanscore. Vanscore is a joined Dota rank of 21st. He is from Russia as well. He has 320 wins, 190 losses, giving him a win rate of 63%. He is the position 4 support. He's Twitter at @true_Vanscore. Another underscore to remember there. And his notable heroes, the Dazzle and the Vengeful Spirit. Dazzle and Vengeful Spirit are both real big playmaker supports. You know, Dazzle can save people with Grave. He's got decent damage with Shadow Wave. He's got some pretty impressive damage over time, and of course with the Poison Touch. And of course, his ultimate is able to do major buffs or debuffs to entire teams, making him very effective. And if you give him a little bit of farm, he's able to kind of move around and gank a little more effectively, or help gank, or at least get into position better. Which is why it's not terribly surprising to see him on a position 4, even though you can definitely play in position 5. Vengeful Spirit, similar sort of thing. She can make plays happen with swaps. She can debuff armor. She has minus armor stuff. She's got a big stun. She's an interesting hero. And now that they've changed her Vengeance aura so that when she dies, the person who killed her takes the bonus as a penalty on their damage for X number of seconds, which is pretty cool and gives her some interesting utility because, when you're trying to swap, one of the dangers of playing Vengeful Spirit, obviously, is that if you're running in, you're swapping someone like a backliner or a support or the carry that you want to blow up really fast. That's going to put you either in the middle of their team or certainly out in a no man's land where you're likely to die. Now, not only are you going to isolate and hopefully kill their hero by swapping, but anybody that kills you is going to take another big penalty until you come back, which I think is pretty nice. It kind of gives her a little more oomph, makes her even scarier with that ultimate. Next up, we have Always Wanna Fly. His joined Dota rank is 19th. He is from the Ukraine. He has 320 wins to 154 losses, giving him a win rate of 68%, which is very respectable. He is a position 5 support, hard support. He has no Twitter that I could find. His notable heroes: the Ancient Apparition and the Bane. Ancient Apparition, I've talked about this before, is a hero that has been seeing another resurgence in the metagame with Cold Feet. You get some major magic damage early on if you've got some nukes in an aggressive lane, and of course, his ultimate is global, as long as you can reach them on time with it, which gives him a lot of teamfight presence. Even if he's split farming someplace else or can't make it to the fight, he can still start things off, initiate, or even scout with it, potentially. Now, the Bane is an interesting hero because he's got excellent lockdown and is a good setup for other heroes as well. So this is kind of a cool set of very impactful supports, but very different play styles, which is kind of neat to see. Finally, we have Resolution. His joined Dota rank is 24th. He is from Sweden. He has 280 wins to 156 losses, giving him an overall win rate of 64%. He is the position 2 mid laner. No Twitter that I could find. His notable heroes: the Storm Spirit and the Dragon Knight. Storm Spirit is a lot of fun to watch, can be very high impact in the mid game once he gets level 6 and is able to get some items up and run around like an Orchid. Can blitz in on top of somebody really fast with his ultimate, drop the Orchid Silence, pull him in, deal tons of damage, and then blitz back out before anybody's able to get up and catch up with them. Can be a very good hero in the right lineup if they're not countering him really hard, and is definitely a lot of high impact sort of mobile hero. The Dragon Knight, sort of the opposite, more team fight oriented, a lot of area damage, a very good lane pusher, also solid mid, very tanky, and can do a lot of interesting stuff with just kind of moving with the team and pushing down towers and sieging the bases in the mid game as well. So, team highlights. Team Empire's Dota 2 division. So Team Empire is a large team. They have multiple esports under their belt. The Dota 2 division formed in 2011. All of the people on the roster were formerly players of Heroes of New Earth that kind of just switched over to Dota 2 when that became viable. Fnatic was on the original roster, and then he eventually left to go to Na'Vi in February of 2013, so semi-recently, only a little more than a year ago. The current roster has been active since November of 2013, so they've been active less than a year. And they took second in StarLadder Season 9, beating EG. They played a staggering 82 competitive games in April, by the way. 82 games. That's a lot of competitive games. These guys have been real busy. Their performance graph, let's take a look. So starting from July, moving through April of this year, we can see that their overall win rate has been going up, and their losses have been staying have more level. They've been increasing as well. In part, that is, I think, skewed due to April here, where they had 32 losses and 50 wins, which is just a huge amount of games played, more than they had in many months, even some of the months combined before them. But I think what this generally shows is a trend of them winning more actively and kind of splitting up that win rate, so they should have a higher win rate now than they did back in July of 2013. So these guys are also kind of doing well for themselves and making their way up, although not with the lightning increases that EG has seen in the last few months. They're still very respectable. I mean, in March, they had a hell of a win rate in March, 34 wins to 11 losses. In February, 33 wins and 7 losses. These guys should not be underestimated. Their overall wins-losses from their career, 456 wins to 255 losses, giving them a win rate of 64%, which is quite good, as I mentioned. Now, notable heroes from the last 20 games. The most played was a Mirana, the Princess of the Moon, just a very popular and very oft-picked hero. She used to be very support-oriented, and then they've transitioned her to being sort of a hard or semi-carry, played in a tri-lane typically, and getting farm things like a Lincoln Sphere maybe, or farming up a Mjolnir, something along those lines, and trying to sort of be that mid-game carry. The most wins they've had, however, was with the Axeman, chopping and dunking to the win, and the least wins was with the Luna. Poor Luna. I personally am a big fan of the Luna, but these guys haven't had a lot of success with her. Now, they are highly ranked, have been playing a lot of games recently, as we've gone over. Their win rate has been increasing over the last year. They are the number 1 ranked team in Europe and CIS. They placed first in 4 tournaments in 2014 and second in another 4. So out of 8 tournaments played, they were in the top 2 every time, which is very, very good. And they seem to be very strong right now. I think they are very good contenders for potentially taking top 4, top 3, maybe even the whole kit and caboodle. So we'll see. I'll be really interested to see what happens with Team Empire. It's a team that I personally haven't watched a lot of games of, but it's looking like they're really just kind of, stomping and taking names and making a name for themselves. And I'll be curious to see how they perform in the International 4. Now we're going to follow up with Cloud9. I believe I messed that up a little bit there with the title. I apologize. Their join Dota team ranking is 8th. Cloud9 is an interesting team, and we're going to get into some details about them. Let's take a look at the roster. Their team captain is Johan Pilidai Astrom. I think is how you pronounce that. This gentleman right here. After the team captain, we have Jackie Eternal Envy Mao, who many of you may recognize from his stream on Twitch TV. He also, as I mentioned, was with EG recently during the Star Ladder series, subbing in for Fear. Then we have Wei Sing Yuan, who you also might recognize from his stream. This gentleman right here, Oh Sing. Following that, we have Pitner, Bone7 Armand. I think it's Bone7. That guy right there. And rounding out Cloud9 is Curtis Owie 2000 Ling. This gentleman right here. So it's a pretty solid lineup. I love their logo. Player statistics. We're going to start with Pilidai. Pilidai is a joined Dota rank of 31st. He is from Sweden. He has 326 wins to 209 losses, giving him a win rate of 61%. He is the position 5 hard support. You can find him on Twitter at Pilidai Dota. His notable heroes: the Enigma and the Shadow Shaman. Enigma is a hero that was pretty popular back in International 3, as I recall, and kind of phases in and out. He's a hero that really needs farm, and if he gets shut down, isn't necessarily all that good, but once you get a blink, and if you're able to get the right initiates off, can really destroy a team fight. Kind of similar to Sand King in some respects. But the nice thing about Enigma is that he can jungle and also can help push with his Eidolons. Shadow Shaman, another hero that's been seeing a big resurgence lately. A lot of play. He has push potential with the wards, the Mass Serpent Ward. He also has 2 very solid disables in the Shackle and the Hex. Shackle being one of the longest disables you can get at rank 1, so first thing in the game. And he has a pretty good nuke as well. Following that, we have Eternal Envy. His joined Dota rank 29th. He is from Canada. He has a win rate of 61% from 385 games won to 242 games lost. He is the position 1 hard carry. You can find him on Twitter at EternalEnvy1991. His notable heroes: the Drow Ranger and the Shadow Demon. Shadow Fiend, my mistake. So Drow Ranger, an interesting hero that we haven't seen a lot lately, although by the time this you guys see this video, likely there will the game between North American Rejects and Team Liquid for the first place in the North American Americas qualifiers for the International 4 should be over. There was a delay due to some server issues the other night, which were crazy server issues, and their draft included a Drow Ranger. So if you guys want to see some crazy Drow Ranger play, that's a video I would check out. It's sure to be a hell of a game. I know I want to watch it later tonight. But Drow Ranger is an interesting hero. She can deal a ton of damage if she gets farmed, like a ridiculous amount of damage. But if you get close to her, her damage drops a lot. Before they reworked her silence ability to it didn't synergize very well. Silence is always good. It's always good to silence somebody, but it's kind of a tough thing to drop when you want to be just sitting in the back and dishing damage. But now that they've changed it up to Gust, I think she's a lot more viable than we might give her credit for being, and I'm really interested to see what pro players do with her, because I think that she could do well mid. I think she could do well in a safe lane, and if she's in a team fight with a little bit of support, or if she does get ganked, she can Gust and try to run away. Might be a decent candidate for something like a Shadow Blade, but I'm not entirely sure if that's the best build on her. You tend to see a Mask of Madness built, and that's pretty ridiculous as well. Next up we have Sing Sing. His joined Dota rank 40th, his home country, the Netherlands. He has a win rate of 57% between 300 games won and 226 games lost. His position, number 2. He is the mid. His Twitter, at Sing2x. His notable heroes: the Templar Assassin and the Ember Spirit. Templar Assassin is a really nasty mid in the right lineup and against the right people. Very nasty. Lots and lots of burst damage. Is really good in the mid game. Has decent escape mechanism with meld, and can generally think. I tend to see people go Deso on her. Lately, we've been seeing people get Midases on the Templar Assassin. The commentators seem to be a little quizzical about this, whether or not it makes sense for a hero that kind of falls off a little bit in the late game to go for an item that's going to, take you into the late game, as opposed to trying to accelerate your farm to other core items first. Maybe a drums or getting your boots done or anything along those lines. Hard to say, but when she's played well, she is an absolute powerhouse, and it'd be really cool to see Sing Sing play her a little bit in TI4, as well as Ember Spirit, who only recently found himself on the Captain's Draft, Captain's Mode roster. He was very popular in Star Ladder once that change was made. A lot of people were picking him up, trying to play around and see how he does. He can be... Ember Spirit in the pro scene seems to be a hero that either really tips with his team and snowballs hard, or is blown up instantly. He's squishy. If you silence him or doom him or do anything, he doesn't have any way of getting out. He doesn't have a lot of armor. He doesn't have a lot of hit points. He tends to die very fast. And you can build him a couple of different ways, but they've nerfed him a little bit recently. He was very scary early game. Now he's still pretty scary early game. But if you get the right amount of farm on him, he can just kind of sit and constantly spam Sleight of Fist and dish out massive damage to the whole enemy team. It'll be interesting to see what Sing does with him if they pick him up in the International 4, but we're going to move on right now to Bone 7. His joined Dota rank is 37th. His home country is Romania. He has 282 wins to 188 losses, giving him a win rate of 60%. He is the position 3 offlaner. He has no Twitter I could find. His notable heroes: the Mirana and the Puck. Both solid offlaners. Mirana obviously played offlane. She has the escape mechanism with Leap. She can get a little bit of farm, and then is trying to get up to her level 6 for Moonlight Shadow and other things to move around, gank, drop arrows, things of that nature. But isn't played. If she's played in the offlane, obviously she's not getting the same amount of farm priority as if they put her in an aggressive try. But an interesting hero nonetheless. And then you have the Puck. Puck is a typically played mid, but I think the Fairy Dragon's very viable in the offlane for the same reasons that she's viable mid. You can a lot of escape mechanisms. You can get farm on her pretty rapidly as long as you're not getting locked out too hard by whatever's in that offlane. But certainly with the escape mechanisms, it's hard for them to go on the Fairy Dragon and kill them. So that's always good. Rounding out the team, we have Aoi 2000. His joined Dota rank 30th, home country, Canada. He has a win rate of 57%, coming from 365 games won to 271 games lost. He is the position 4 support. His Twitter, @Owie_2000. His heroes, the Tiny and the Phantom Lancer. This is an interesting set of heroes, and it shows me that in recent months, his position has been shifted from a Tiny and a Phantom Lancer especially is definitely your position 1. A Tiny can be played mid as a position 2, can be played in the safe lane as a position 1. Tiny can also be played support if you can get a decent enough items on him to boost his otherwise terrible mana pool. But he's got some really nasty stun and nuke potential between Toss and Avalanche. So it's interesting. I'd be curious to see if Cloud9 runs either of these heroes on Owie 2000. I would be shocked to see him, if he's playing in position 5, to see him play a Phantom Lancer. But it could be kind of interesting to see him play something like a Tiny. But I would expect to see more classic sort of support heroes from him at the International. So Cloud9 is a brand new team. They were just formed in February of this year, so less than 3 months old. They were formerly Speed Gaming. The roster has been playing together since September of 2013, however. So despite the fact that they are really new now as Cloud9, their roster has been together for a few months longer than that, but still not for a super long time. Since forming, they've taken second place in 3 large tournaments in 2014, and they took third at MLG TKO America. Sing Sing and Eternal Envy are both very avid streamers, and they tend to have a lot of people watching the stream, although I will warn you that Sing Sing's chat is not something to be entered into lightly. Next up, we're going to look at the performance graph. So we only have 3 months of performance graph as Cloud9, just formed 3 months ago, but we'll take a look at the sort of overall trends anyway. About dead even. They've been playing more games, so their win rate hasn't really increased. I think they're still very solid at around that 60 to 64% win rate, but they haven't been sort of making big gains or anything like that, unlike some of these other teams. Still very respectable over that 3 months. A decent showing, and they've been playing more as time has passed. Some of these bigger tournaments came up. Overall wins and losses, they have 87 wins to 55 losses, giving them a win rate of 61%. So I was a little off before when I said 64. It is 61%, which is still a very solid win rate. They win more than they lose. Always good to know. That's why they're at the International, guys. Now, they've been doing pretty well since forming. The fact that the team is new, I think, is mitigated by the fact that their team has been playing together for longer than Cloud9 has been a thing. So these guys know each other. They've been playing for a while. And a lot of these guys have been playing for a long time, just in general, not even necessarily on a team together. And they have a respectable win rate so far. So there's not a lot of data. There's not a lot to go on. I just know that, like, Eternal Envy and Sing are both solid players, and they got invited for a reason. These guys have a stable roster. Speed Gaming did well for themselves. They've been doing well for themselves since forming, and I think they'll be an interesting sort of potential, not exactly a wild card, but I'm not really sure how they're going to do at a big tournament like the International 4. Next up, we have Fnatic. These gentlemen right here. Their Join Dota team ranking, 9th. The roster, team captain, tall, fly, Azik. This gentleman right here, looking fly. Next, we have Adrian, Era, Kryziu. I apologize, I'm butchering some of the pronunciation of these guys, but I like this guy. He's a lot of fun to watch. Next up, we have Kai, Hani, Hanbuckers. This gentleman right here, and following up, what I can only imagine is his long-lost twin from birth, Kale Trixie Sarnian. This gentleman right here, looking slightly paler, and Johan No-Tail Sunstein, following up, rounding out the ranks of Fnatic. No-Tail. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the individual players, starting with Fly. Fly is ranked 48th on Join Dota. His home country is Israel. He has 442 wins and 301 losses, giving him a win rate of 59%. He is a position 5 hard support. He is the team captain. His Twitter, @FnaticFly. It's interesting to me that a lot of these captains seem to be playing position 5. Now, his notable heroes are the Naga Siren and the Keeper of the Light. Naga Siren used to be played support, believe it or not, before, I think, in large part due to Arteezy, she suddenly became viable again as a massive carry, especially in the mid lane, for her ability to get lots of farm with illusions especially when she gets a Radiance up, and is split push all the lanes at once and be really, really hard to deal with. So it's not unsurprising to see her as a notable hero on a hard support like Fly, because that used to be the way they play her, but I wouldn't expect to see Naga played support anytime soon or in the next International, the International 4. But Keeper of the Light, with the recent boost to Aghanim Scepter for him, giving him constant spirit form and a bunch of other crazy stuff, he's been getting picked up lately as teams are experimenting with trying to get the Ags on him and play with him as a support role, and he's an interesting hero. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him Fly pick up the Keeper of the Light once or twice at the International 4 for sure. Next up we have Era. His join Dota rank is 49th. His home country is Russia. Actually, I think he's Sweden. I apologize. He has 455 wins at 315 losses, giving him a win rate of 59%. He is the position 1 hard carry. His Twitter is @EraDota. Notable heroes: the Tiny and the Chaos Knight. Chaos Knight is somebody that's always fun to see in a competitive game because he's so swinging and random. That's sort of his shtick. He's chaos. But when he gets on a steamroll or gets lucky, man, that is just terrifying. I think there's a really good game Na'Vi played where Havost went as a Chaos Knight and they won in like less than 20 minutes. He just got really scary really fast and he just tore all the towers down. It was ridiculous. And Tiny is one of my favorite carries. You can play him. Tiny is really cool because even if he doesn't get a ton of farm early on, once you get that Aghanim Scepter up and maybe get him a blink or something, he's still really scary. And the more farm he has, the scarier he gets. There's a ridiculous game where I think Alliance is playing Tiny and they were playing against Na'Vi, and he just got really, really fat, really, really fast, and they were like wisp ganking into like the fountain. It was ridiculous. Like he was just cleaving down 4 or 5 heroes at a time. It was completely out of control. So Tiny is one of those heroes that can snowball really, really hard, and is a lot of fun to watch because he's got a lot of cool things he can do with all parts of the game. Next up we have Hani. Hani has a joined Dota rank of 45. His home country is Germany. He has 448 wins to 311 losses. This gives him a career win rate of 59%. His position, the number 2, he is typically played mid. His Twitter, @KaiHani, KAIH4NN1. His notable heroes: we have the Puck and the Earthshaker. Puck is definitely a hero that's played mid regularly. Earthshaker is an interesting one. I have not seen a lot of Earthshaker recently, personally. I know he's been drafted a few times of late. I think in particular Fnatic has been drafting him. And the Earthshaker is a hero that, if given some farm priority and getting things up like a blink and some other stuff, can make a major impact. Fissure is a pretty solid ability. Echo Slam is ridiculous. He can deal tons and tons of damage if he gets the right sort of ultimate off. He can just destroy teams, but he hasn't been picked as much lately. I don't think he's quite as safe a pick as some of the other heroes that are currently popular in the meta. I'd love to see them pick up an Earthshaker and have Hani go ham, though, during the International, let me tell you. Trixie has a joined Dota rank of 46. He is from Finland. Fnatic, as you guys can tell, is a team that has heroes from a lot of different countries, as opposed to some of these other teams where most of the heroes are from the same country. Fnatic is all over the place in Europe. So Trixie's from Finland. He has 461 wins to 327 losses, giving him a win rate of 59%. He's the position 3 offlaner. You can follow him on Twitter @FnaticTrixie. His notable heroes: the Naga Siren and the Venomancer. So we talked about Naga Siren used to be playing support. Now that Naga Siren can be played as a mid or even potentially as an off lane, or you rotate people around, there's a couple of ways you might be able to play her, but I would imagine Trixie's playing her more as a farming Naga Siren than what Fly would be playing her as. And the Venomancer is an interesting hero. Can be very good for pushing, can be very good at defending, counter pushing, and is really nasty in a team fight if he gets things like an Aghanim Scepter and is able to get Gales and his huge area poison. I forget what the name of his ultimate is, but if he gets that off and you're not ready for it, the damage is outrageous. Next up, we have No Tail. No Tail has a joined Dota rank of 24th, pretty high up on the list. His home country is Denmark. He has a win rate of 59%, coming from 459 wins to 321 losses. He is the position 4 support, and his Twitter at Fnatic NoTail. Notable heroes. We have the Wisp and the Batrider. We've talked about Wisp, we've talked about Batrider. They're both awesome heroes with a lot of ganking and sort of potential to really change up team fights and initiate. We'll be seeing whether or not they draft him in the International 4. At the International 3, Wisp and Batrider are both pretty much first pick, first ban, and that's become less of the case. But against someone like Fnatic, teams might decide to bring back those bans, because if NoTails really good on those heroes, like, you don't want to be playing up against a Batrider or a Wisp when someone's really good on them. Let's take a look at some team highlights. So Fnatic is a major European esports team. They have a lot of different sports that they cover. I think one of their more renowned ones is a Counter-Strike team as well. The Dota 2 team converted from Heroes of New Earth in 2012, along with some of the other teams we've talked about. After some restructuring, the current roster has been active since September of 2012. So these guys have been playing together for about a year and a half now, which is a pretty solid amount of time. They did okay in the International 3, nothing outstanding. They took 7th to 8th, but after that, they jumped up in wins. They've taken second in a lot of tournaments, and they recently took first at the MLG TKO Europe tournament. Pretty interesting. Let's take a look at their performance graph over time. We can get a look at this. So from July of last year through April of this year, you can kind of see there's a bit of a fade off in August, September, October. They're playing less games. And then they've been playing steadily since, and their win rate has generally been going up. The number of games they've been winning has been going up. The number of games that they've been losing has also been staying basically the same and going up. These trend lines indicate to me not so much that they are winning more or losing more, but that their win rate's roughly the same. They've just been playing more games. That said, they've been taking more tournament victories than they had previously. So I think they're still doing better in the competitive sense of getting farther in tournaments than they were at the time of the International 3, which could be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do. They sort of seem to be a little bit hot and cold sometimes, Fnatic does. But when they're on, they are on. They have 464 wins, 340 losses, giving them an overall win rate of 58%, which I think is one of the lowest for a team that we've seen so far. But their notable heroes, the Earthshaker, the Mirana, and the Treant Protector on the least number of wins for them. With people like Mirana and Earthshaker being popular on some of these players, it's not surprising that they would be drafted regularly. And to kind of get back to what I was saying about their overall win rate being on the low side, they had a middling showing at TI3. They've come out strong since then. They are still the number 3 ranked team in Europe, so they're doing quite well in the European Dota scene, and they're not a team to underestimate. They haven't necessarily had the best overall win rate, the best overall performance compared to some of these other teams. But as I said before, when they are playing well, they'll come out and just sneak victories. They'll really tear it up. They can be very formidable if they're able to get the right practice and the right kind of mentality, I guess. I don't anticipate them beating teams like EG. However, so I wouldn't expect them much beyond the top 6 maybe, but that again could all change as we get closer to the International. But right now I would say at the highest, probably top 6. They might even go a little lower because there's some really nasty teams out there right now. Still, I wouldn't expect them to be like total pushovers either. So let's wrap things up. The final video is going to focus on the Chinese/Southeastern Asian teams, which I'll be putting out probably next week sometime to wrap up this series. I hope you guys have been enjoying them. You can look at joindota.com, wiki.teamliquid.net/Dota2, gosugamers.net, and dotabuff.com for more information on the teams, more statistics, more player info, all that good stuff. A lot of what I've been pulling from is from these sites directly, so they're a good resource if you want to learn more, get more in depth about some of this stuff, or some of the teams I'm not covering. And remember, always check out the compendium for your in-game items, for more information about the teams, to be able to place your bets and your votes. Not your bets necessarily, but certainly your votes for who's going to come out on top. And as always, share the video around. Post it wherever you want. Get people into it, man. I want to get people hyped and excited about this tournament. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be really, really cool. So feel free to share. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you would like. I have new videos. I usually post a new Dota video once a week. I post strategy videos on a semi-regular basis, and I'm trying to get a couple other things going so that I can get some more video content out there for you guys. And you can follow me on Twitter at Captain Jandor. Follow me on Twitch. I am twitch.tv/Captain Jandor, keeping it easy. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I will catch everybody next time.